Hello, hello, and welcome. It is official. Autumn is in the air. It is time for cozy nights, and also, if you're in America, a little time to show how grateful we are. And before we even jump right in, I want to take a second and say how grateful I am for all my new subscribers. This channel is new, and I can't believe how well it's growing. Thank you all so much. There is going to be a lot more movement breaks, rhythm play-alongs, and a ton coming up. So make sure you are going ahead. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, and follow along, because we got a lot more that we are going to be doing, especially in the next couple months. So with that, let's go ahead and jump right in for this wonderful lesson that really encapsulates not only this wonderful holiday spirit, but all of these wonderful autumnal vibes that we get during this wonderful time of the year. And let me walk you through this wonderful lesson that uses the fantastic story, One is a Feast for a Mouse. I absolutely love it, especially because I use this as a full Orff play-along lesson. If you don't have Orff instruments, it really goes for any pitched instrument that you have access to. So I'm going to walk you through how I bring it into my classroom, but the first thing that I always start with is I get my students dancing and moving to some of my favorite classical music. This is to Vivaldi's Autumn. I believe it is the third movement. Oh my goodness, so fun, so engaging. This is one that my students request throughout the entire year, and it is already posted up on my YouTube channel. Go ahead, check it out, bring it into your classroom. It's one way to bring a little bit more movement into our lessons, but without feeling like we need a whole new degree to bring in meaningful movement that gets our students up and engaged with our lessons. I hope that it's helpful. All right, today's story is about a little mouse, but first we need to listen and decide what rhythms that we hear. So it's just a simple rhythm analysis, just very basic at the beginning with just TT or ta rhythms. Lucky, lucky, lucky me. All right, this phrase is going to come up over and over again, but we're also going to add treble clef letters to it. So for my students, we do Every Good Boy Does Fine, space equals space. I always make these editable, so if you do end up getting this lesson plan with me, then you can change it to whatever phrase or trick works for your students. All right, then I go through. We know as musicians, repetition, repetition, repetition. So I have my students go through it before they add it back to that phrase, lucky, lucky, lucky me. Just the descending scale, nothing crazy, because we're going to be adding a lot more complicated rhythms, all right, which is why I usually do this for grades 3 through 6. You can do younger, you can do older, a lot of fun. Let's keep going. But first things first, my students really find these mixed rhythms a challenge. If you have also been there where teaching these mixed rhythms is really tough, I find that visualization and not even visualization, but having these effective visuals up for your students is big to help them understand the concept of what's happening here, right? So if we're talking about this rhythm right here, a tika-tika, if you're still doing tas and TTs and things like that, you might just be talking about the actual note names themselves. You might be doing counting already. Again, this is all editable, but for my students, we're still doing T's and tas and tikas and all that. All right, so I have my students come up, and the entire time, this is what's happening. I'm walking my students through. Sometimes they mix. Which part looks like a tika-tika? Which part looks like a T? All right, let's put it together, because together they make a tika-tea. All right, and that T is going to feel longer because it takes up more space in that steady beat. And then we add it to the second phrase, still a short rhythm analysis for One is a Feast for a Mouse, then a rest. And lastly, we're going to add in those pitches before bringing in that first part of lucky, lucky, lucky me. And then getting started with this story, which again is about a mouse who, lucky for him, one is a feast for him. If he gets one of anything, oh my goodness, it's more than he can handle. And yet this mouse, this lovely little mouse, just keeps on finding something else that he wants to eat. This book is engaging and endearing, and that mouse is just, I love that mouse. I love that mouse. He's a wonderful mouse, and I love bringing him into my classroom. Because at one point or another, we've all been that little mouse where we might just be a tad too greedy, where our eyes were a little bit bigger than our stomachs, and, well, we end up making a mess of things. So as always, with wonderful stories like this, make sure you're supporting these amazing authors like Judy Cox. Make sure you are either, borrowing this book from your library, you're adding it to your music classroom library of your own, right? Whatever it is, so that we can support these authors that make telling a child a fact they're going to forget in a day, but telling a student a story they will remember it for life. And this is one of my students' favorite ones. So go ahead, make sure you're using it. All right, you read a little bit of the story and you go ahead. You're going to walk your students through those rhythm analysis for the first thing that he finds, a teensy tiny toothsome pea. We get right back to the story, read a little bit more, and this time he finds a cranberry glowing like rubies, these cranberries, right? And then we add those together. Now, I have done this where I divide my class in half for just the rhythm aspect of it and see if they can go ahead and stick on their own part. Again, that really depends on how much of a challenge you're doing for your students, because you can also just do it one at a time and then adding in the pitches. Because so much of the rhythms are changing, I really do try to keep the pitches where one pitch at a time, and I find that that's the most helpful for my students, only because we're not really teaching this necessarily. We're more so letting our students sight read it, get a feel for the rhythms, get a feel for playing whatever pitched instrument that they are on, because this is only a small section of the song, and it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and longer and longer and longer, and we only have 45 minutes. Although, can you use this lesson for multiple classes? Yes, and I definitely do. All right, we get back to our story. One is a feast for a mouse. All right. What we've done so far is we've had a lot of rhythm analysis. This is the last one where you're having your students just look at individual words to start, or multiple words, but really keeping it short and sweet. When he finds the carrot sticks, you're going to actually have your students drag the rhythms themselves. Oh, and I almost forgot, this lesson plan also comes with a digital and a printable workbook so that you are gathering the data that you need, but also doing it seamlessly through the story so it doesn't feel like something that your students, oh, we have to do this. No, they get to do this and along with the story, It's simple, it's effective. And because I've learned a lot about what not to do, you can't touch any of the things except what you want to touch, right? I learned that the hard way. All right, so throughout this, they're going to be dragging in the pitches, they're going to be dragging in the different rhythms that they hear, and they are either doing it independently or they are doing it as a group together. And just as a reminder, each digital worksheet also comes with a printable worksheet. All right, back to the story. So far he's found peas, cranberries, olives, carrots. Each time you're having your students get a little bit more of the song as they keep on going. And then on this next one, you're going to have them walk through not the tika-tika, but now the tika-tika rhythm. Again, walking them through, giving them that visual, seeing if they can think of it themselves, and then trying to see if your students can now also sight read just a bit of this mouse potato before putting it in. Again, trying to keep the pitches for the treble clef easier, but again, this is edible. Not edible. You can't eat it. This is editable. You can change it and make it make more sense for your students. So if this is a little simple for your students, go ahead, change around some of the pitches and make it more challenging. Or do what the brave ones do and see if your students can do some harmony. That's only for the brave ones, and depending on which pitches you're doing. At this point, my students usually need a bit of a rhythm movement break. This one is actually being posted this week, so let me go ahead and take you into the background of my YouTube channel to show you just a little bit of it right here. Time to make a Thanksgiving feast. Your students are going to be using TTs, tika-tikas, and those mixed rhythms that we've been talking about. Your students get to do small rhythm analysis before putting it all together. Sweet potato, sweet potato. And just like our story, it gets a little harder each time. So cranberries and gravy, cranberries and apple pie, turkey legs and bread baskets, until at the end, and I know this is going to be my students' favorite, there is a speed round. All right, which I know for some of my students, I might have to go ahead and pause this as we go through this. But can your students decide what bread basket is, right? Which pattern makes the most sense? Can they do it in less than 5 seconds? So maybe your students will also need a rhythm break or a movement break. For my students, especially those wiggly students, I have them stand up and they jump to this, right? And sometimes it's not even so much about getting them on the rhythms, but it's just giving them the chance to move. And yes, throughout this entire thing, my students are playing and they're actively engaged in this lesson. This is not a passive lesson by any means. They're playing throughout the entire thing. They're working on their worksheets. They're just actively engaged, but sometimes my students also need that chance to move as well, especially before this last one, which is the toughest one, because now this mouse wants pie and Thanksgiving turkey. How about pie all covered in cream? Add it all in. This is the grand finale. Can your students do the entire thing for the end of the story? Which I'm not going to give you any spoilers right now. You're going to have to read the story for yourself. It is just absolutely fantastic. And if this all looks a little chaotic, yeah, it is. I have a written lesson plan that comes along with this to really walk you through step by step just how I bring this into my lesson, along with the digital and the printable worksheets. All right, and with that, I want to say that especially during this time of the year, oh my goodness, I am so grateful to all of you liking, subscribing, and following along on this journey. I only just started posting on YouTube, but what a joy it has been. One of my biggest beliefs as a music educator is that movement is learning and movement is music. So if I can make it just easier for you to bring in some movement into your lessons without you feeling like you have to change how you lesson plan, without feeling like you have to get a new degree in order to do this, but instead just to give you tools and lessons and tips and tricks on how to bring movement into your lessons to make them more engaging, more effective, and to have your students learning more, then that is just something that I get to do as part of my job. And I'm so lucky to be able to do that. So thank you so much for joining us here. Make sure you're liking, subscribing, following along. Again, you can just take the ideas from this, take the free stuff that I have on my YouTube channel, or if you want this entire lesson for free, just to try out for yourself, then go ahead, make sure you click the link in the description below. Check it out for yourself. As always, if by the end of the free month trial of my membership, this just isn't for you, no worries. Make sure you email me at info@soaringscribesacademia.com and I will go ahead and refund that first payment. Alrighty, and with that, I want to say thank you so much and happy playing.